Hey MBA hopefuls, we are live on air with MBA Waves talking all things business and education. Please give us a like and subscribe because it helps us continue to create all the free MBA Waves content. Today on episode 144, we're talking how to construct the roadmap for round one. And can you believe it? It's already July. Bara, like, can you believe that?
I can't believe it's not even just July, it's mid-July.
It's mid-July, yeah. Thanks for the correction because there's a big difference between July and mid-July. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking about demystifying the application process, the MBA Waves way. And we want to help you understand where you are right now in the application process. And of course, construct your own roadmap today with the resources from your friendly Vidcast series, MBA Waves. As the dates close in, we understand that you are working on your application. It can be really exhausting. That's why we decided that you could do with some extra inspiration and guidance, and we got you covered today. So, we're going to do a quick roundup of the important as well as interesting MBA episodes that we've done in the past year. And we have put it in a format of a roadmap so that this can help you easily for your great application. So, are you ready to begin, Bara? Sorry, you're in mute.
You might be anywhere on the journey, right? You might be wanting to like fine tune things, or you might actually be just starting out. So, based on where you are, figure out what you're going to need. And we're going to be giving you lots of tools and connections to just beeline to what you need to do and carry on. And you could always contact any of us, me, Krithika, or Eric, if you have any specific questions.
hmm And I would say that the MBA waves are specifically unique is that it is, full of fun and candid conversations like these, and you have authentic information right from the horse's mouth most of the times, be it from adcoms or admissions consultants who've been in the industry for so many years. And of course, it's most relevant and up to date because we are very mindful of what you all need, and you're going to get the right guidance every time. So, here's the first thing that you need to be doing if you are planning a roadmap for round one. And if you're wondering when is round one for many of the business schools are going to be as early as September 4th for Harvard and Wharton, for example, and continuing on to the next couple of weeks. So by September end, you will be done with majority of the top USB school programs. A little bit of European programs tend to be a little later, but that's round one for you. So, Bar, we know that prepping for round one can be very daunting. Um, Moving on to the next one, what do you think are some of the points that you remember from the talk with David?
Well, with David, we talked about putting together an application checklist. And, I'd even pull further back and say, what does your life look like at that moment in time, right? Like, what are the obligations that you have? So it's not just that you have to, like, things don't stop happening because you're applying to school, right? So you've got commitments, you've got family maybe, or partner, or you've got your workout schedule. So whatever your roadmap is, understand where you are, as well as understand where you're applying and where you're looking at the schools, and how to get a checklist together so that you organize yourself. And a spreadsheet is a great way of doing it. So is a calendar app. I use Google Calendar, and that's a great way to just insert things in so that I know where things are going to fit together. How about you?
Mm. Yeah, I completely agree to that. And I would say one of the big things that is important would be deciding the order of applications. Like one of our guests said, it's as simple like just put together the deadlines, whichever deadlines are in the first place, right? But
Right.
sometimes it's not that easy. You might want to say, like, how am I going to optimize? Because we know as admissions consultants that some schools' essays are easy for you to tackle and then use that in order to build the applications of the others and so on. So I would say that spending a little bit of time in deciding the order of your applications would be important. And last but not the least, I would say that deciding whether to apply or not for a round often gives a lot of grief. It's like, should I take the test once more, or should I really apply in round one, or am I not going to have any chance in round two at all? So these are some of the big problems that I see in my candidates.
Yeah, and for those of you who are just starting, assume that you're going to take the test more than once, right? Whichever test you're taking, you're going to take it more than once. And if you could pick one test and not two, like
Mhm.
only take the GRE or only take the GMAT, but get a sense. And we'll talk a little bit about tests before, but fit that in your roadmap, fit that in your schedule where you're going to take these exams.
Hmm. And what I loved about the episode with David was how you all discussed about the power of sticking to a suitable timeline that works for you. And it can be different for different people. I had this person working as a working in the merchant navy, so literally on a ship, and he would have access to the internet for only like 1 hour a week, and he would make use of it so well. So if you really put your mind to it, I'm sure that you can figure out a way of arranging your life for the MBA application. So moving on, Bara, like one of the next things that is very crucial for getting into a top MBA program is definitely what I like to call the extended trailer, which is your resume, which is so different. And in this episode with Lisa, who's an expert, one thing that stood out for me was sell yourself and use the resume as a marketing document, which we never think of specifically when you're looking at a job, but it made so much more sense. And in terms of how, when you're selling yourself, you are very sure about what the other person would want, and that's how you sell yourself. So to me, it made a lot more sense. And when it comes to business school resume, what is it the first thing that comes to your mind, Bara?
Well, I want to think about what the deliverables are, right? Like what did you what in the jobs that you had did you make a difference? What impact you had? I would imagine that that's a great way to sell yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I would say that the nuts and bolts of the resume building is so important. So it starts with like as simple as understanding what is a format. Is it in one page? Do you start with action words? If so, what are those action words? Please don't use spearheaded and orchestrated. We immediately know that your friend ChatGPT was at work. Nobody spearheads anymore in the corporate business world today, unless you're talking about 1800s or you're like an archaeologist or something. But bad jokes apart, I should say that the choice of your action words, the way you're highlighting your key accomplishments with respect to how it mattered to the company and not just your role, all of these are some of the key critical points that come into the nuts and bolts. And one of the things that Lisa said, which really resonates, and by the way, Lisa works with a lot of executives and leaders, and these are the kind of roles that you guys would want post MBA, in the 2 3 years after post MBA or so on. She said that embrace who you are and amplify it. And I thought that was so beautiful. How does that quote land for you, Barak?
I think it's great. I'm still on the spearheading being from a different century. I'm trying to think if I've even seen that recently, but I wonder if there's a site that has a bunch of action words because I think action words are really important, not only because they describe what you do, they
Mhm.
really when you're reading action words, I think a person really gets into it more, right? It adds to the drama of what you're reading.
Mhm.
So I do think having an eclectic list that doesn't repeat of action words is important.
Mhm. Yeah, there are a lot of sites out there which would give it, but I would always say that err on the caution, of like keeping it simple rather than complicated.
Mhm.
And as you said, like we see a lot of Gen AI usage, which is like foster or tapestry or like words which don't really mean anything. So, for example, even if I say manage, I can say I'm managing this session right now, or I could say I manage all my work and I managed a team. The point is that it's so vague. So you don't want to keep somebody questioning about like what did this person do? Like did they manage like a 10-member team or a 20-member team? What were their like exact responsibilities, right? So I think that when you have a chance, you shouldn't embellish. You should just keep it like, keep it simple
And
and
specific.
not and specific and not too complicated. So
Yeah.
that is about the nuts and bolts, and I will say that definitely dive into this episode if you want to understand how to spruce your business school resume. And the resume becomes kind of like an anchor because it gives you a quick understanding of what all you've achieved in your career journey, and also is kind of like an indicator to what you want to do in the future, your future aspirations. So, which is where we are going to go next into one of the toughest things. Bara, this is your territory, and you're
This
so
is
familiar with it.
this is
And I
definitely
love,
my story.
yeah, and I love how Travis gave us his, dirty little secrets and some important secrets. So, over to you, Bara, to tell us more about the tests.
Sure. So you can't really get away from taking a test to get into business school. So this is something that's part of the process. So you really want to figure out how you can make it, dare I say, enjoyable and a learning experience. And the first thing that you want to do is not just automatically say, I'm going to take the GMAT or I'm going to take the GRE, because most schools will accept both, right? So you want to, first of all, if the schools that you're applying to, make sure that they are taking the GRE, and then take a diagnostic of each test to see exactly which one is going to be better for you to take. And some schools also take the EA, right? Like Columbia is one of the schools that for their full-time master's, for their MBA program, they will take the EA. So take a test and see how you feel and see how you perform, and then really get into the weeds to see what you didn't understand, and have a frank conversation with yourself or with a tutor or with a colleague or a test prep expert, which test you should take. And then you really want to hone in on how you're going to prepare for it. Is this something you're going to DIY? Are you going to go on the boards and figure out how to do the material? Are you going to take an online program? Are you going to work with a tutor? Are you going to take a group class? There's lots and lots of options. But again, you're looking at your roadmap, you're looking at your schedule. What are you going to be able to fit in? The most efficient is obviously working with a professional one-on-one with tutoring. But if you have time and you've got some spaciousness, you can start with a course, and then as you get closer, fine tune it. So in terms of the number of times, we always tell students to plan for 2. That's what I just said a little while ago. And the waiver situation is a little bit of a, it's a question, like, why are you asking for a waiver? We don't really get into that as much as you probably do, Krithika, because we're
Mhm.
actually dealing with the tests. But if a test is going to make your application look all that much better, and this goes across the board, even for SATs and ACTs, you want to
Mhm.
have that on your record, because it is really the only thing on your application that compares you to everyone else who's taking the test. So it's the
Mhm.
one standardized thing. And so if you're doing well, that bodes well. Did you
Hmm.
want to say something about it, Krithika?
This was like, I was just like, I'm completely in agreement with some of the stuff that you mentioned. And one thing that came to my mind is it is sad that some students are still probably needing to take the test now, which is like hardly like, say, 45 days before D Day or your round one. But it's completely okay. I would say that don't. I know that, and I would say that for many people, it's not what they planned. It's just like how it happened for
Yeah.
some of them. And of course, there are people who have already done the test. But if you are somebody in the camp who has not taken a test yet or who has not achieved your target test score, you definitely want to check out this episode because we also had a lot of discussion around which test might be better for you, when to take when to determine how many tests to take, or when to switch tests, and so on. And see, the idea at the end of the day is there is no shame in taking the test that gives you the highest score, because no one's going to say that, oh, this didn't happen in the first attempt, or there is no shame in taking the test more than twice, as Bara, you mentioned. And what I really liked about the episode with Travis, who's a test whisperer and also a fellow admissions consultant, is that he mentioned that GMAT is not just testing you on the logical ability, your quantitative ability, your verbal ability, and so on. It's not just skill based test, but it's also about testing your ability to perform under pressure, and to your critical thinking process at the time, and ability to manage time. Because if you're not able to solve a question under the time that is given, then obviously you're going to be losing points for it, and so on. So I think this aspect is important because it spoke to the need for business schools to measure you on certain things like adaptability, and of course in the real, like, seeing how you fit into the real world. So I thought that was very important as well.
And it was a fun episode. It's a
It
fun.
is a fun episode. Yeah. we we also had some questions that you might want to think about, given that GMAT moved to GMAT Focus, GRE went to shorter GRE, but all of them are now called as GMAT and GRE. And just a confusion for some more time.
Right.
Um,
So, but
mhm.
you always, I guess that the last thing I want to say is that you always want to use, at least as part of your study diet, official materials.
Hmm, absolutely. And I think this is why we also, moving on to the next one. So this is why we also had a very important, and I would say necessary episode, because a lot of people have anxiety. And knowing this, I would say that this was an important one. So Bara, over to you for what stood out for you from this episode.
Yeah, I think what was important, like I'm an expert in helping students get over test anxiety, and Dr. Ben Bernstein has been doing this, I want to say like 40 years also. And then we also had Scott Carroll, who's a test prep person who deals with anyone who's dealing with test prep is dealing with helping students manage test anxiety. And so there were just different approaches. And ultimately it's about taking the test and not having the test take you, and coming up with mechanisms so that you can go in feeling calm, confident, and focused. And there's different things are going to work for different people, and depending on where you are in the process, that's going to really dictate how you're going to manage test anxiety. If you've got more time, you can talk with a counselor or a therapist. If you've got less time, you're going to want to do something like what I do, which is hypnosis and neurolinguistic programming, which deals with the symptom. But all of these things work. And if you know something that's worked for you in the past, do it again. But the test is a metaphor for life, right? That these tests are, and the whole application process is a metaphor. So if you have tools in your toolbox to help you, it's going to help you in other situations when you're feeling anxious, right? And you want to deal with anxiety when you first see it or early on,
Mhm.
because it just builds up over time. So it's better that if you recognize that you have it, to address it. And there's lots of apps, there's Calm, there's online programs that you can do. So there's a lot of material available, because stress is something that in the modern contemporary world is something that we're dealing with, and it's useful to go into the test to be your best self.
Mhm. Yeah. And for me, what was so important from that episode was like understanding when it was normal to have like certain levels of anxiety versus like what is something like going to be causing, say, like choking or the dire performance anxiety, right? Which is not like, and again, like I think what Dr. Bernstein said was like, let it not be normal. Like you need to think of it as um, certain levels and how we react to certain situations which can be stressful and so on. So the key though was to learn that no matter what, whether you're afraid or scared or too scared, you have to just do it. It doesn't matter, like you have to just like go ahead and do it. And if you find that something is stopping you, figure out like ways to accommodate. And I
Mhm.
would say that one of the things that I really liked from his episode was a thing about just breathing, and how often we like, he's mentioned like how some person could like just hold everything together and not breathe during the test and make it so difficult for them. So I thought like that was so true, because we really think of that situation as something to be afraid of or really stressful, and we make things bad for ourselves. So I liked some of the mechanisms that he had mentioned for managing the anxiety both during and before the test. And also his most important point being like practice. You cannot expect to like just let go of your breath like just before the test and feel better, but like practice all these techniques beforehand.
Exactly.
So
Yeah, the
yeah,
breath is so it's so simple, but it's so powerful. And heart
mhm.
math also has a beautiful It's called heart breathing, which we didn't talk about in the episode, but
Mhm.
learning like heart breath is basically you put your hand on your heart and
Mhm.
you look at a point across the way, and then you breathe as if you're breathing from your heart. And if you do this before you take the test, or you do exactly what I believe what Dr. Bernstein was saying was, before you do a question, you take a breath and then you exhale. You basically just allowing yourself to be present in the moment, and you're just freeing it up, right? You don't want to be stuck
Mhm.
in that. And heart breathing also does that. You want to just allow yourself to be in that moment. And even though this was about managing test anxiety, people get nervous before interviews and they get nervous before presentations, right? So all these tools are interchangeable, which is spectacular.
Hmm, absolutely. And I will say to anybody working on their applications, please take a breath. It's all going to happen. I just feel that having working with a lot of candidates now for these M7 schools, I can really sense the panic and the anxiety levels increasing, just like our global warming, sea levels, I should say. But I can really see that happening. But I would say, yeah, take a breath. All right. And then we can ease into it. So the essays, the big news is that they have changed. They have changed, but I feel the changes are for the good because it's more direct. You can always pull out these experiences that they're asking for from your hat, and with a little bit of self reflection and deep thinking. And one of the things I really loved about this episode was as Linda, Dr. Marlena, and of course Faisal corrected us, right? We had more than like almost like a century worth of
More,
experience in the
more.
room. Yeah, and more than a century of experience in that room in admissions consulting. So, folks, you really want to like listen to these experts help you break down each and every essay from these top schools and give you like more like a roadmap and a plan to attack them, and of course like come out strong from it as well. So a couple things that stood out for me from the new essays that are out for many of these programs is how they are asking for, how they don't want to be too ambiguous and they're like more direct and they want specific personalized answers. And I think this could also be like a direct response to the AI, or but more importantly, like it could also be like how they are perceiving the current applicant pool to be. So it could be like either of two. So Bar, like in your experience, right, and especially from that episode, what do you think that students should be doing when they look at essays?
I think they need to be really in what's the word? They need to embrace their authentic voice. Like they need to really know that you're really writing to have the reader know who you are. It's not about impressing them. It's really about just showing up who you are in the again the same thing with the test, but in the most authentic and the best possible way. So,
Hmm.
and in a concise way, right? Because like you were talking earlier about some words are vague. You want to make sure that every word counts, and that
Hmm.
you're presenting yourself and your true voice.
Hmm. And interestingly, the true voice can only be heard when you listen deeply.
Hmm.
And similarly, your brevity can only come from, I would say a lot of rewriting, writing, rewriting, editing. So that's a kind of cycle that you want to keep using, because you have to do not expect to answer Stanford's what matters most to you and why in one sitting. That's going to be only possible if you've done a lot of background in terms of understanding who you are, where you came from, where you want to go, and why you want to do that. So, for all of that, you need a lot of self awareness tools. There are so many out there which help you to find out your personal values, your career values, and of course, like align it with what you think you can do for the larger, as I say, the greater good of the society. So you really want to like take into account all of these factors, and of course, most importantly, understand why the school is asking what they're asking, and how it fits into their culture or their application. So I would really say that please head over to episode 142 for understanding deeper about all these essays, especially for the most coveted MBA programs in the world. And moving on, this is a resource that we're really, really happy about. And in the past, we have done so many schools where we had adcoms, alumni, and all the current students, and even career services folks, and everybody come in and present their school to us in a most candid manner. And we were able to understand from different perspectives and get a real understanding of these schools. So, Bara, I'm sure that both of us have visited many of these together as part of AGAC conferences before. What do you think stood out for you in these MBA episodes that you didn't know about the schools before?
I was really impressed with how some of the schools had really cutting edge courses, right? Like whether it was Bitcoin or it was about did they I don't they might have talked about gig economy, but like they really were not needing to it didn't seem like they had to go through like the process of getting things approved that takes normally many years. It
Mhm.
sounded like they were really addressing what's happening
Mhm.
in this world right now. And so I really appreciated that from the schools. Like when we went to visit Cornell, we went to visit
Mhm.
Columbia, like how everything we were talking about. I think we did an assignment at Cornell about Amazon, right? Like how does Amazon work? And obviously Amazon's been around for a while, but it was interesting to hear how they positioned that and how that would work in a case study in the classroom. So I thought it was interesting, both the times that we got to hear from professors and how they taught, but also how the schools really are. I mean, this is a human experience. And I think often
Mhm.
applicants don't realize how human it is. And there's real people that are reading your essays and are really thinking about not just you, but how you would fit into the cohort that
Mhm.
they're putting together. And so the other thing I thought was really important about schools is visiting the schools and talking to alumni and getting a sense of what the school is going to be for you. You can go to one school and think that that's where you want to go because on paper, it's like dating, right? It's
Mhm.
like on paper, they sound really great. And when you go there, they might be really great, but they might not be for you. And then you can go to another school that sounds pretty good on paper and they were up there for you. And then you go there and you fall in love with the
Mhm.
school and the program. So what was really lovely about these episodes is that they put a human face to the schools, right? And so you
Mhm.
got to meet alumni, you got to meet people that were either professors or the admissions folks or career people. So you really
Mhm.
got a human experience, and I think that that's really valuable for candidates and for applicants to see what these schools are about and not have it be just an academic exercise of the web and
Mhm.
materials that you get in the mail about the schools.
Yeah. So what I was when I was talking to somebody, right? They this is somebody who's an international student who's never traveled abroad. To them, a Texas McCombs and a Georgetown McDonough may not seem that different to them for the first time when they're seeing. That's because they've never traveled there or been there. And in fact, when you look at some of the things that both schools have to offer, it might look similar in terms of academics, networking, recruiting, career services, professional development, career planning, whatever you call it, because every B school, every top B school would have it. So, what stood out for me in these episodes was we were able to get different perspectives, and I was thinking in my head that hey, we get to see them in their element. Like half students would be joining us from from wherever they are in their classrooms or near running to the classrooms and so on. And each of these episodes gave us a sense of what the school stood for, what was new in their program, definitely how they could do something good for you in terms of your careers, what were they already doing. And as Bara was saying, definitely a lot of things about the courses and the curriculum. And especially, I would say that understanding your school and where you're applying is going to be the crux of your application. That's why we save the last for the best. So if you head on to these MBA Waves episodes, we had the teams of school members come in and show us why their school was good and what kind of culture they had. And in fact, it was really nice that I can remember one thing about each school, to be very honest. I still remember the one about Simon, right? Like, and I was thinking like Rochester, I need to eat that the thing called the garbage plate or something, and I'm like, hey, yeah, that's something that I would want to try, and so on. So, and of course, we have some other great schools right here from all over the world. So I would say that please look at some of the featured school episodes in order to do more research and get that authentic voice as to why you would want to go to a Darden or a Cornell or a Cambridge or HKUSC or an Imperial and or any other top school in the world. Anything else you want to add, Bara, about the school episodes and how they can be of help?
Well, I do think that mentioning the garbage plate is that we wanted to specifically have people understand where the school fits in the location where it's at, right? So it wasn't just that the school exists in a vacuum, right? There's a relationship
Mhm.
between the businesses that are around them, or the businesses that the career center has ties with for recruiting,
Mhm.
but also, what's people have to have this certain donut, or they have to have this certain event that takes place, or one of the schools talked about these socials that just sounded
Mhm.
very extravagant and very like Harry Potterish. And so understanding the culture of the school, and then how it fits in the whole landscape of where the school is, what outings students went on, and what experiences, what partner schools they joined up
Mhm.
with in different locations. So it just really fleshes it out so that it's just not words on paper. You're hearing it from people, and that can also be an opportunity for you to ask more questions, right? You can reach out to the
Mhm.
school and get in greater depth. So this is a great, it's more than an introduction, but it's definitely more than what you're going to get on the website. So it's a great opportunity if these are schools that you're interested in, and we'll be having more schools in future episodes as well. So
Right, definitely. So, just to round out about the schools, I would say that please do your research about it, and you might end up figuring out that one school is better for you than not. When you go deeper and understand the culture and the people and the peers and the entire ecosystem, as Bara was saying. And before we move on, Bara, any parting words of advice?
um what would be a good, it's, I just want to celebrate that this is such a great time in your life, and it's a really fertile time, and it's a time for you to learn about yourself, um, the good, the bad, the ugly, but you can reverse the bad and the ugly, and you can really make this enjoyable and a time to reflect on how far you've come and where you want to go, and then help manifest that self for yourself. So it's a really exciting time, and I just want to, give kudos to all of you who are applying to school now, because it's just such an exciting time. How about
I
you?
know. I know. I'll say like I always feel energized around this time. I don't know. My creativity goes so high along with my clients because I'm able to see the transformation, and the transformation is the one that really helps me, get so excited about everything that's around. Because I could see somebody who through their journey, and suddenly it's like they bloom all of a sudden, and suddenly it all falls into place. And I am for that moment. I wait for this moment. I'll be very honest, that moment doesn't come unless there's a lot of like grief before or tears before as well, and sometimes, but it is something, as you said, worth celebrating. And not everyone gets to do this. So if you have decided that you're going to business school and you're looking at a top MBA program and what it can do for you, then doing it the right way, with these resources and definitely much more resources. Because of lack of time, we were able to pull something together that will be of great use to you now. But we definitely encourage you to head over to mbawaves.com for all your featured school episodes as well as theme based episodes that tell you about everything that you need to know about business. So, with that, Bara, I'm going to wrap it up for today. And I want to thank you for this lovely conversation that we always have, and for all the guests in our audience. If you like today's episode, please give us a little thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe to MBA Waves to stay on top of all the latest trends and news. Next week, we are coming up with a spotlight on post MBA careers, product management. I'm sure that some of you would really want it. And the week after, we're going to be having something on video essays, which are also huge. And please keep watching the space as we bring in new and updated information about all the latest and the greatest that is happening in the world of business and education. Thank you, everybody. Head over to mbawaves.com. See you next week. Bye.
Bye. Thanks.